Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar where we'll be talking about how to engage employees in a hybrid and flexible working environment. So we have 12 people joined, so thanks everyone for joining. We're just going to give people a minute just to join and then we'll get started. Just housekeeping, if you do have any questions, then you'll be able to see a chat function and a questions function in the bottom right of your screen. Wonderful, we'll just give people another minute or so and then we can get going. Great, we've had a few more people join, so without further ado, I'm going to get started and start by sharing my screen. So welcome everyone. For those of you who are new to our webinars, I'm Bea, I'm the Director of Customer Success here at Wazoku, and I oversee a team of innovation consultants, challenge designers, helping organizations to use crowdsourced innovation to solve problems and meet opportunities. So these webinars are for innovation practitioners. Perhaps you are a challenge manager, you're a wannabe challenge manager, or you're running a crowdsourced innovation program. And I'm really here to give you some tips, some tricks, and just some lessons that we've learned from working with lots of different organizations running crowdsourced innovation programs. So format is typically the same. We'll start off with just a brief introduction into Wazoku and how we help with organizations crowdsourcing, both from internal and external crowds, and then have a little bit more into today's topic, which is how we can use Wazoku to engage employees in hybrid working environments. And actually beyond even looking at the hybrid working environment, which is the kind of core topic of today, but also think about some of the other ways and challenges we face at the moment with the Great Resignation, as it's called. So not only how are we keeping our current employees engaged and happy, how are we actually attracting talent to our organizations and creating a wider network, and also when there are, of course, organizational problems, we're all seeing, lots of empty seats, people are moving around, is actually what role does crowdsourced innovation play in helping to engage employees and create a future within our organizations. We're going to then dive into some actual challenge examples, both on our platform, but also some real life customer examples to show you what people are doing to address not only those challenges of actually how do we create the network of innovators, but also around keeping and engaging those existing employees. So in terms of Wazoku, who we are, we work with organizations, typically large enterprise, but anyone from sort of 1,000 people, typically upwards, with allowing them to and supporting them really with building crowdsourced innovation programs. So that's capturing ideas to solve specific problems, either from a crowd of people inside the organization or helping to build a network outside of the organization. And we do this using challenge-driven innovation. So what we're thinking of is, rather than just asking for any specific idea, is thinking about what those key strategic priorities or problems and opportunities are, turning those into a crowdsourcing challenge, exposing them to new audiences. Perhaps we've got people in our midst who are able to solve them. We wouldn't typically know unless we were to go and ask everyone. And then finding a way to be able to get those ideas through to conclusion. So as well as the software elements, it's also around capturing all that important data. So giving you the visibility around where are ideas coming from and how long is it taking us to get from that initial concept stage right through to an approval process, perhaps then an incubation and a scaling point as well. So giving you that complete oversight as to how your innovation activities are running and where they're coming from. And why this is important, particularly in light of today's topic, is around ensuring that in a work culture where people are doing flexible, they are hybrid, they are in the organization perhaps short amounts of times, it's how do we truly enable our problem solvers in our organizations to help us with identifying new opportunities and tackling those problems, especially when we don't have all the people in the same building as perhaps when we used to. So it's really about collaboration and ensuring that visibility and tracking. So I mentioned initially we work off challenge-driven innovation. What we're talking about simply is putting problems out in front of a crowd that matter to us, be that an internal or an external crowd, and offering some form of incentive to drive contributions. As we said in previous webinars, this isn't necessarily about financial incentives. As is the case of today's topic, we're not necessarily paying our employees to be able to incentivize them to solve problems in the crowdsourcing sense. It's really around giving visibility, skills, exposure to people to be able to help them become innovators and develop those skill sets. And when it comes to running a challenge, we always typically follow the same process, typically starting off with a goal or opportunity. It might be something linked to your sustainability initiatives. You may have a continuous improvement objective, and actually understanding what the specific pain points are and really breaking those down into challenges. So ensuring the scope is quite narrow, we're quite focused. And with that, we can get ideas that we can act on and we can actually implement. So in doing so, really improving our chances of getting successful ideas, which we can then implement. Our crowdsourced innovation goes through the process of being posted to a crowd. Now that might be, as I said, it might be internal, external, it might even be a combination of the two. But posting that challenge out, capturing those ideas or solutions, bringing those through to an evaluation, integrating those into the existing organization and developing those out so they can truly scale and solve our problems. So if it is a new approach, do you recommend just taking yourself through this process? We have several webinars on it, just to familiarize yourself of how you can use that challenge-driven innovation to truly increase your chances of successes. So the question of today, what are we dealing with? And when we were first thinking about this between the customer success team, we wanted to think about how crowdsourced innovation has become, as I say, an important part of engaging employees. And actually one of the drawing points to start with is around employee retention. So certainly you may have all seen it a lot with both in your organizations, but certainly in the news is actually that the employee retention issue is rife. And actually a recent study in the US labor market showed that actually, I think it was in March this year, around 4.5 million people quit their jobs, which is the highest since the 2000s. So that's a significant change in the way in which, organizations are keeping and retaining talent. And some of the reasons cited for this by the researchers, as well as there's articles all over the place on it about this great resignation, include burnout. It's perhaps the lack of flexibility that people are afforded when they were working during COVID and coming back to very sort of stringent ways of working. Some of it, of course, compensation, and maybe perhaps lack of employee recognition. There are surveys, of course, that when people exit the organizations, which gives you this kind of data, but this is just some of the things that I've read about and some of this that the team have come across. And what this really creates for organizations is a fuel drain, really. And although we're seeing ways to be able to address this, I think some of the examples cited include sort of Citibank's Zoom-free Fridays to be able to get that sort of renewed focus on building a great place of work. There's more we can do to be able to actively engage and keep our employees. I think you even missed the first point there. Great PowerPoint work from me. But I think it's also a recognition, and this comes back to the flexible working, that actually the nature of what we think of work has changed, and it isn't anymore where we go, it's what we do. And it's really this what we do that's under threat. So we need to be thinking about, as people enter into new ways of working, as a new generation of workers who's used to more flexible and more hybrid working comes into play, it's actually how do we utilize crowdsourced innovation to be able to help address some of these problems around retention and also engage people. And I see I've got a question already, so I'm going to just pause on this and go back to my question, if that's all right. There's something in the chat. So, currently involved in a crowdsourcing with a company developing visualization of data on maps. It facilitated shared learning. So thank you for that. That's a great insight. Wonderful. So let me get back to my share. Sorry, it's just me on the call today, so I'm flipping between windows, but hopefully I'm in the right place at the right time. Great. So I just ran through some of the sort of the out and setting a bit of a scene here. But as I mentioned, what are people doing in terms of actually addressing this problem around employee retention and engagement? Is we're seeing a lot more of investment into employee development, and we'll go in a little bit more detail as to how people are utilizing crowdsource into that employee development and employee experience. And of course, making your company a great place to work. So some of the use cases we've seen for our platform is around actually how can we use this as one of the ways to empower people, to give them a voice and ensure that they are effective problem solvers. And one of the ways that we're also thinking about when the benefits of using crowdsource innovation is actually supporting the whole person. So when we're thinking that, it's not just a person with an idea coming through a scheme, it's actually how can we use this sort of crowdsourcing to help us with developing specific skills, insights, and taking the entire people's sort of all those skills and experience into the fold within our organization. So just a second there, it looks like I've got a duplication. Apologies about that. So in terms of what organizations we're working with are already doing to address both this great resignation to keep people who are perhaps working flexibly engaged, is actually utilize crowdsourcing and showcasing some of the employee innovation successes. So one of the common ways to do this is to have a competition, often to be able to showcase or utilize the platform to showcase your best implemented idea, perhaps of the last month. You might even be doing it annually. But one of those ways to say, you know, we do in fact care about what our employees are doing. We want to showcase their successes, and how can we actually do that? We might want to run a competition. So that's one of the use cases that we're seeing to address this, as I say, great resignation. Another is people-related challenges. And actually, we've seen some HR challenges perhaps not do too well in the past. And I think that's often when we ask people a challenge where we can't necessarily act on an idea. So I think when we're looking at people-related challenges, you might find an area that's come out of an employee survey, for example, and utilize that data to be able to shape the crowdsourcing challenge. So, for example, you might say along the lines of, how can we support you in a flexible working environment? Or how can we help you get a better balance between work and home life? Those are some of the example challenges that you might want to run to engage your employees in coming up with the solutions about how they perform better and how they're supported at work. Would recommend staying away from a broad people challenge, which is, you know, how can we provide a better employee experience? Because you might tend to go down the route with that of actually getting, we want more holiday, we want better pay, etc., etc. So really looking to your employee serving and finding a challenge which is actionable, which is positive, so that you can really showcase that initiative and get people engaged. Another great one for engaging employees is actually to utilize crowdsource innovation and challenges as a way of teaching people better innovation skills. So whether someone has an idea, it might be a process improvement tweak, it might be more of a, let's say, new products and services challenges, getting people or giving people the opportunity to come in, perhaps develop out a new product or service within the organization, and really give them those skills to be able to test, to learn, to fail, which are actually really attractive for future career prospects. Now, another common use case for actually ensuring that everyone is aligned, engaged, as I say, irregardless of where they are in the organization or where they sit, is actually bringing your employees into your company value or strategic projects. So we're going to look at an example in a little bit around Enel and how they're using crowdsourced innovation to be able to bring ideas to get together, both from the inside and the outside, to meet their sustainability goals. So a great way of saying, particularly when people are questioning, why is it that I work for this company, is getting people to align around those important values of the organization and allowing people to contribute ideas to it. Now, competition, I mentioned it more from a recognition perspective, is actually also a great way for engaging employees in quite a time-bound scenario. So as I say, bringing people in, allowing them to get together and collaborate as teams to potentially develop, as I say, a new product or service. So again, being quite specific about the time frame, which is a little bit different to those continuous idea captures, so that people can contribute ideas and actually get that senior visibility, often a great way of people facilitating people's career progression. Another final one, which actually is often overlooked, we're always thinking about ideas, is often actually capturing employee pain points. What we're not looking to do specifically here is create a bucket where people just complain about all the things that are wrong with the organization. It's more an opportunity to understand where specific frustrations and pains are existing in people's everyday roles, so whether that's in specific customer interactions. So really by doing that, building up a really nice data set, understanding where those problem areas are, and allowing that to then go and feed your challenge pipeline. So I'm going to switch over now, and I'm going to provide a couple of example challenges, sorry. But before that, does anyone have any questions on what we just covered? I'll take that silence as a no, and we'll look at some example challenges. Now, Rolf, you can just confirm in the chat when you can see my screen. That would be great. I think we're all good. Lovely. So I'm here on a lovely. Thank you. I'm here on an instance, a demo instance of our platform, and we've just got a few example challenges prepared, speaking to those examples that we've seen work well in organizations. And I really want to highlight beyond just the time-bound competition to capture new products and services, what I think of is really key in working well in other organizations is that space for people, and particularly ambitious people in your organization, to come forward with new product and service ideas and be able to work alongside a small team that you may have. It might be your innovation team, it might even be your innovation champions, to take potentially a new product or service idea and better flesh it out, develop it more into a solution design, get the opportunity to pitch that to someone, perhaps on a innovation council, or to some leadership, and go through the process of actually testing ideas or concept out. So this needn't be something that's time-bound. You can run it as a time-bound challenge if you want to, but what's really critical here is giving your employees the opportunity to partake in something new, allowing them to be able to test something, to fail something, to be able to, as we have examples in this challenge, actually work through a business model canvas or something similar to be able to better structure their ideas, but actually capture all those benefits of allowing people to harness those innovation skills. So rather than going to a competitor or, perhaps going off to do some innovation learning, is create that space inside your organization for people to come test out those ideas. And in doing so, give yourselves the opportunity to build up new product and service pipelines. So I'd really recommend that an always on a new products and services challenge is something that you do if you want to be able to harness those innovators in your organization and provide that outlet for the creative people, the ambitious people, to come forwards and take those ideas through. Those are often your really ambitious people are the ones who are going to go out the organization, spin off a idea potentially themselves outside the organization. So if you have a mechanism for really engaging them, that can be a thing to do. And with this process here, you're able to capture ideas. This is one we've seen work well with other organizations. Do some form of review to be able to test out and say, is that an idea we want to be able to bring in, test out a little bit more, do some solution design, and then give people the skills to actually even take that through to a pitch. Maybe it's a small amount of seed funding that they want to be able to get that idea off the ground, but really ensure that they have that mechanism to test, to think about their ideas, to pitch it, to be part of the team working on the implementation as a way of engaging those true innovators and giving them an opportunity. Example 2 is actually around one of those people related challenges. So organizations, when they start with us, and not even just in the first year, it can take a couple of years. It's quite hard sometimes to convince someone who hasn't run a challenge before to run a challenge. And often the problems where we say, it's quite obvious to challenge managers, to innovation program managers, what those challenges are. The people who own the problems might not always be aware of the benefits of using crowdsourced innovation to solve those problems. So an example challenge, how do we foster cross-functional team collaboration? Now, actually, this challenge question for one of our organizations came out of an employee survey. So what they wanted HR to do was to actually think alongside the digital team, how can we enable better ways of working, better cross-collaboration, because it is an area they had scored quite low on their employee survey around cross-functional working. So running a challenge such as this, whereby people can come in, submit an idea, you can do an evaluation, potentially bring people in to discuss those ideas and have more of a peer-to-peer evaluation before taking those through to a final review. So really recommend go to your employee surveys, look at your employee pain points and think about how you can structure that. Again, as a time-bound challenge, you don't need to keep this on all the time to be able to bring forward some of those ideas, take them forward to a solution. That's just a second example. And the third one I just wanted to touch on before we stop for questions is around the Enel program, which I was speaking about a little bit earlier in this webinar. So Enel's is actually an open platform. So this is both for employees, but also people outside the organization, and have created a challenge center which combines their innovation activities with their sustainability, and has created a word which is always quite difficult to say around open innovability. Managed to get it right that time. So what this is around the organization's goals as an energy organization around transforming the energy sector through open innovation. So wanting to ensure that the value of actually drawing not only on the collaborative experiences of employees, but also taking that into startups, SMEs, larger companies, and bringing those audiences together to be able to tackle these challenges which the organizations have. So this is actually an open platform. So any of you on this call are able to register and become an Enel. Luckily, I don't work for them, so I'm not promoting them. But I really do want to show how they're really using this to tie into the value piece. So saying, look, what's front and center of our organization is actually transforming the sector. We know that we can do, we've got some great people and we can do that, but let's actually bring those together with the outside to be able to tackle some of the challenges. So whether it's a new design for secondary substation, we've got a couple of live challenges here at the moment, inviting employees and external people to be able to come in and face those challenges. Really recommend as well that it's as well as doing these open challenges, which we always promote as much as possible, is really those value related challenges, sustainability, things that you know your employees or the employees of the future really care about, and ensuring that they play a role. So it's gone into that lovely screen where all the tabs are currently open. So that's a couple of examples there. Does anyone have any questions? I see someone is typing. Thank you. There are challenges on IPRs. How do we deal with them? Sorry, what the IPR, is that the IP related challenges? Is that what we're referring to? Just waiting for a response. Are you, sorry, Samira, are you talking intellectual property rights? Okay, so there's a couple of things you can do here, either both with, if you're thinking more about the external challenges, if it is actually new products and service ideas, we can get in touch and show you how you can use pieces of functionality. But when you are signing up for a challenge, there's something called a challenge specific agreement. So if you're running an open challenge, you can actually provide sort of, as I say, a form where people have to read and agree what the terms and conditions of those challenges are before providing a solution. So organizations, depending on the type of challenge, certainly in the open space, will offer financial incentives depending on the scope of the idea. So is it an idea or is it actually a fully formed solution? And do some form of transfer with an open crowd. Internally, it depends on most employee contracts that we work with. If you are raising that idea to an crowdsourced employee innovation platform, the employer IP rights sit with the company, but it's specific terms and conditions of those of that challenge, which you can include by using challenge specific agreements. I hope that answered your question. Happy to talk about it a little bit more, Samira. Wonderful. Any questions from anyone else? No? I will then, unless we don't have any other questions, if you do have anything or anything pops up that we've noted in this webinar, please reach out to me directly. I'm bea@wazoku.com, and we can talk through some more examples. We have Steve typing. Thanks, Steve. Just give you a second. How difficult is it to get participation at scale in the organization? So it depends, Steve. With some organizations, it is quite easy. Potentially, the culture is such that people can say it. In other organizations, it can be a little bit harder. But I think in terms of actually driving the right levels of participation, there's what is good for you. But also when thinking about the design of the challenge is actually, why does this matter? Why is it important? The sort of so what question, why would people want to get involved? And I think when designing challenges and thinking about the process, it's thinking about those incentives. So as I mentioned, if you have people who are perhaps really ambitious, which there will be in every organization, is the incentive might be to get some senior exposure, to be able to develop some more skills, and that might be the incentive in going to, let's say, a new products and services challenge. It may be, we see some organizations where, again, it's the training, it's the visibility that might be some of the incentives. Others, there might be financial reward associated with it. So how difficult is it or how easy is it? It depends which way you look at it. Some organizations, I say, harder than others, but we've got quite a lot of tips on how to actually drive that participation at scale if that's what the organization is looking for. Wonderful. Great. I think then that concludes today's webinar. Thank you for joining me. As I say, do get in touch if you are wanting to find out more ways that you can engage employees through crowdsourced innovation. Thanks a lot.